Have you ever just laid in bed in the morning knowing you should get up, but every part of your body says, nope, not today? Maybe you're not even physically tired, just unmotivated. That feeling, that internal tug of war has a name: limbic friction. It's when your brain is in conflict. One part of you wants comfort, stillness, maybe sleep, and another part is trying to push you into action. And when you force yourself to move anyway, you're using something called top-down control. That's when your higher-order brain functions step in and override what your body feels like doing. A lot of content online talks about this. People say you need to push through your fatigue. Some say do it out of love. Others say do it out of anger. Honestly, both can work. It depends on what motivates you personally. The core idea is that you're overriding resistance with deliberate effort. This kind of control, this top-down override, is what happens when you resist temptation too. Like when you see junk food, crave it, but say no. You're not just reacting, you're actively steering your behavior. And here's the thing, the more rested you are, the easier it is to use top-down control. Sleep matters. Now take someone like David Goggins. The man is a machine. I've had the chance to meet him, and I even endorsed his book. And while I don't know every detail of his story, it's obvious that he's mastered this process. He knows what it's like to feel resistance, and he knows how to conquer it. I don't think it's just grit. I think he's developed a very powerful internal story. He's familiar with that friction, and he knows how to flip it into fuel. He's wired himself to associate friction with progress because he understands what's coming if he pushes through a win. And this is a key insight. If you can see the win in advance, you can pull some of that dopamine forward. You don't have to wait to feel good. You can start feeling good just by imagining what success will feel like. That little trick, delayed gratification backed by anticipation, starts releasing dopamine now, not later. There was actually a study just published on this. It shows that our ability to delay gratification is tied directly to how our dopamine system works. It's a complex paper, but the idea is this: if your brain believes that enduring discomfort now will lead to a real reward later, it starts to reward you ahead of time. That's powerful. Let's be real. None of us are David Goggins. I'm not, and I never will be. And that's fine. What matters is understanding that the people who can override limbic friction even when it's tough don't necessarily feel good doing it. They just know how good it will feel later. The real issue is this: most people struggle to override that resistance because they can't visualize the win. They haven't tasted what success feels like, so it's hard for them to chase it. If you don't know the reward, the effort seems pointless. And I want to be clear. Limbic friction is not some little voice in your head whispering, stay in bed. No, it's loud. It's shouting. Stay in bed. Sleep is important. You heard it on that podcast. Prioritize rest. Overriding that voice takes serious willpower. But again, willpower is top-down control. And here's a twist. Resisting instant gratification actually goes against how humans evolved. For most of history, survival depended on reacting quickly. If food was available, you ate it. If shelter was nearby, you took it. You didn't plan for later. You went for it now. But culture and society have changed. Progress depends on people who can delay gratification, people who look beyond comfort and push the boundaries. Think of Elon Musk. He's not content with Earth. He's asking, why not Mars? This applies across every domain. Anytime we conquer internal resistance, we're engaging these systems. And yes, it's a skill. Like any skill, it can be trained. Neuroplasticity supports that, meaning your brain gets better at overriding friction the more you practice. So, how do we train it? There are two ways. Boost your alertness with biological tools. Dopamine, adrenaline, caffeine, nicotine, even prescription stimulants. This is the fast track. Many people use these. Or go the psychological route, what I call scruffing yourself. Like grabbing yourself by the collar, pulling up and saying, "Let's go." It helps to separate yourself from your current state, to imagine a future version of you who already succeeded. That future self is proud, strong, and grateful that you acted today. You start to think like that person, and it shifts your state. I know this sounds odd, but sometimes I actually third-person myself. I imagine myself as a character in a story. He got out of bed, he showed up, he did it. It helps because it creates distance from the feelings of now and connects me to a vision of later. There's a psychological term for people who talk about themselves in the third person. I won't say it, but it starts with N and ends with ism. Yeah, narcissism. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about doing this in service of overcoming resistance, not to glorify yourself. Sometimes our internal narrative is too tied to our emotional state. We feel tired, so we believe we are tired. But what if you could step outside that moment and take control? This morning, for example, my partner and I had made plans the night before to jump in the ocean early. When I woke up, it was gray, misty, kind of drizzly. The last thing I wanted was cold water. I didn't tell her that, didn't want to spoil the mood, but internally, I was dragging my feet. Still, we drove to the beach, and guess what? The water was actually warmer than the air. It ended up being an incredible morning swim. The sauna after made it even better. I felt amazing all day, more alert, more alive, because I pushed through a little discomfort. That's a small example. But it illustrates the point. If we can start seeing our reward systems, our top-down control as tools we can modulate in real time, we get our power back. You don't need to do this all the time. It's exhausting to always scruff yourself into action. But if you use it strategically, especially when it counts, it can change everything. Now let's talk about what happens after we push through resistance. What happens when you finally win, when you overcome that internal fight and do the hard thing. That's where things get interesting, because a lot of people assume you should celebrate every win. But the science tells a different story. The dopamine system, the part of your brain that tracks rewards, is really good at predicting outcomes. And if rewards become too predictable, your brain actually stops releasing as much dopamine in response. Sounds weird, right? But casinos understand this perfectly. If the slot machine rewarded you on every pull, you'd lose interest fast. But when the reward is random and intermittent, you keep coming back. It's the unpredictability that keeps you engaged and your dopamine flowing. So here's something practical. Sometimes you should withhold the reward. Let's say you finish a 90-minute deep work session. Sometimes go ahead and treat yourself coffee, a break, something you enjoy. But every once in a while, delete the reward on purpose. Just move on. Why? Because it creates a dopamine reward prediction error. Your brain expected a hit, didn't get it, and now it's craving more. That craving, it makes you more motivated the next time. That's powerful stuff. It's like playing a video game where you're picking up power-ups and coins. Sometimes you get the reward, sometimes you don't. but it keeps you in pursuit and it keeps the experience novel. Here's another thing. Avoid layering dopamine. This is when people stack every possible source of motivation at once. They wake up fully rested, chug coffee blast music, put on perfect workout clothes, go into a sunny gym with all the best equipment. That sounds amazing, right? It is until it becomes a requirement. If your brain gets used to needing all of those things to perform, you're in trouble the next time conditions aren't perfect. You won't be motivated. You'll feel flat. You might even skip your workout. So, one thing I've started doing is this: every few workouts, I intentionally make it hard. I leave my phone in the car, skip the music, avoid caffeine, I strip it down. It's not fun in the moment, but the next time I do bring all those elements back in, the workout feels euphoric. It's like I've unlocked a superpower. By doing this, I'm protecting my dopamine system. I'm making sure I don't burn it out with constant stimulation. Now let's shift gears to something more serious and maybe a little uncomfortable for some people: pornography. No moral judgments here. I want to speak purely from a neuroscience perspective. What we're seeing now is that a lot of people, especially younger generations, are developing real issues because of excessive porn consumption. The problem isn't necessarily the content. The issue is that the dopamine spikes from porn are far more intense than what you get from real-life interactions. Over time, the brain becomes desensitized, and the things that used to be thrilling, actual relationships, intimacy, human connection, start to feel flat. Even worse, some people are training their nervous systems to become aroused only by watching other people have sex, not by participating themselves. That's a real rewiring of the brain, and it's a serious concern. It's the same with ultra-processed foods: high salt, high fat, high sugar. If that's all you eat, then something simple like a bowl of rice or a salad, it's going to taste like cardboard. Your dopamine system is fried. Same with social media. You know that feeling when you're scrolling, but you don't even know what you're looking for anymore. That's not motivation. That's addiction. Your dopamine levels are tanking, and you're just trying to get back to neutral. I call that fighting for baseline. You're not chasing pleasure anymore. You're just trying to feel okay. That's when you know something's off. And this ties into sleep. Sleep deprivation is one of the biggest contributors to brain fog, lack of focus, and emotional instability. Sometimes it's not obvious. Maybe you don't feel it at the first day, but by day 2, you're in a fog. And look, the environment matters too. I've walked into certain offices or classrooms and felt instant exhaustion, not because I didn't sleep, but because the air was stale, the lights were dim, the conversation was dull. You can feel your energy just drain. In contrast, when you're deeply engaged in something you love, you can go for hours with full attention. That's dopamine and adrenaline working in your favor. I once taught night classes just to avoid the post-lunch energy crash. Evening lectures were more lively, more interactive. But no matter how passionate the material, there were always a few students drifting off. I don't blame them. I used to be that student. Some of my best naps were in class. Point is, engagement matters. You can't force focus if you're not emotionally connected to what you're doing. This is especially true for people with ADHD. When they love what they're doing, their focus is incredible. It's not a disorder of attention, it's a disorder of interest. Ritalin, Adderall, those work by increasing dopamine and norepinephrine. Same chemicals we've been talking about. So, yes, attention can be hacked chemically, but ideally you want to cultivate natural pathways to focus. So, what do you do when you're stuck with something you hate, like a subject in school that bores you to death? Here's a trick I used. Instead of pretending I liked it, I leaned into how much I hated it. I told myself I despise this. I'm going to destroy it. I'm going to conquer this subject just to prove a point. Weirdly, that worked. That emotional engagement, even if it was fueled by anger, boosted my focus. And once I did well in the subject, I actually started to enjoy it, because mastery feels good. So, yes, pursue what you love, but also train yourself to push through what you don't. That's how you build true resilience. Let's talk about something we all deal with but rarely master: focus. The ability to concentrate, really truly lock in, is one of the most valuable skills you can have today. But here's the twist: it's not just a talent. Focus is trainable. Just like going to the gym builds muscle, focusing consistently actually rewires your brain to become better at focusing. It all comes down to something called neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to change and adapt through experience. And the way you trigger it is pretty straightforward: by engaging deeply in what you're doing and then giving your brain space to recover. In other words, it's not just about working hard. It's about resting smart. Learning, especially deliberate, effortful learning, happens in two phases. The first is where you actively engage with the material. You're focused, leaning in, absorbing information. This phase is powered by dopamine, norepinephrine, and acetylcholine, all neurotransmitters that heighten alertness and mark certain brain circuits for change. Then comes phase 2, the rest phase. This is when the actual rewiring of your brain happens. And here's the surprise: most of that rewiring doesn't happen while you're learning. It happens when you're asleep or in deep relaxation. So, if you want to improve your ability to learn anything, a language, a new skill, math, music, emotional intelligence, you have to prioritize both focus and recovery. Let me give you an example. Say I decide to learn conversational French. I focus hard, repeating verbs, memorizing vocabulary. During that focused effort, my brain releases acetylcholine, which highlights the specific neurons involved in processing that new information. It's like drawing a highlighter line through the circuits that matter. But those circuits don't actually get stronger while I'm studying. They strengthen after during sleep, or what's called non-sleep deep rest, things like meditation, quiet time, or short naps. In fact, studies show that even a 20-minute nap within a few hours of learning something can dramatically speed up how fast you learn. Your brain literally replays what you just did, sometimes even in reverse, like a fast-forward replay of everything you just tried to absorb. There's also a tool you can use during the actual learning session. It's called the gap effect. It works like this. Let's say you're doing a 60-minute study or work session. Every few minutes, randomly just stop for 10 seconds. Do nothing. Let your brain go idle. What research shows is that during those short gaps, your brain rapidly replays and consolidates what you were just doing up to 20 times faster than normal. It's wild. You're not just taking a break, you're supercharging your learning in those moments of rest. You can set up a random timer or use an app that buzzes every few minutes to remind you to pause. But the key is randomness. If you do it on a fixed schedule, your brain starts to expect it, and the effect weakens. And let's be clear, you still have to do the work. These little pauses don't replace deep effort. They amplify it. This ties into how we structure our day. So many people try to grind for 5 or 6 hours straight, back-to-back meetings, endless to-do lists, zero downtime. But our brains aren't wired for that. We work best in cycles, focus, rest, focus, rest. That's why I always recommend working in 90-minute bouts. After about 90 minutes, your brain starts to lose efficiency. That's the perfect time to take a break, ideally a nap or a short walk or a few minutes of silence. But I get it. We don't all have time for a nap in the middle of the workday. That's fine. Just make sure that the sleep you get at night is high quality, because that's when the real magic happens. Let's talk about sleep for a second. Great sleep starts with how you wake up. Sounds backwards, right? But it's true. The most important factor in setting your sleep rhythm is getting bright light in your eyes early in the day. This doesn't mean looking directly at the sun, obviously, but getting natural sunlight even for 10-30 minutes in the morning sets your internal clock, boosts healthy cortisol, and sets a timer for when melatonin, the sleep hormone, will be released later that night. Artificial light doesn't cut it. You have to go outside. Light through a window or car windshield doesn't trigger the same biological response. You want natural light hitting your eyes, not filtered through glass, especially within the first hour of waking up. It's fine to wear glasses or contacts. UV filter lenses won't block the effect. Just get out there, look around, maybe journal, have your coffee outside. Make it a ritual. I do this every single day. Even on cloudy days, there's still enough natural light to do the job. You might just need to stay outside a bit longer. And here's the cool part. The more consistent you are, the better your body gets at knowing when to wake up, when to sleep, and how to stay alert during the day. That light cue in the morning starts a cascade of biological events that prime your brain and body for optimal performance. Now, in the late afternoon, you want to get another round of sunlight. Why? Because it adjusts your sensitivity to light at night. That way, when you're exposed to artificial lights from your phone, TV, or home lighting, in the evening, the impact on your sleep is less intense. I call this your Netflix inoculation. So to recap, bright light in the morning equals sign sets your circadian rhythm. Bright light in the afternoon equals sign reduces sensitivity to nighttime light. Avoid bright light at night period, especially from screens. Blue light gets all the blame, but the truth is all bright light can suppress melatonin, not just blue wavelengths. Dimming your lights in the evening, using night mode, or even wearing blue blockers can help. But the foundation is light timing, not just what kind of light, but when you get it. Thousands of people have messaged me saying this one habit morning, sunlight completely fixed their sleep. It doesn't solve everything, but it's the place to start. Of course, not everyone sees immediate results just by getting sunlight in the morning. Some people do all the right things. They step outside, get that bright light exposure, and still their sleep feels off. If that's you, don't worry. There are other layers to consider. One big one is caffeine. Caffeine is not evil. In fact, it's one of the most widely used and most beneficial substances on the planet when used correctly. But like anything powerful, the timing and dosage matter. If you're consuming caffeine too close to bedtime, and too close can mean 8 to 12 hours beforehand, you're likely compromising your sleep, even if you fall asleep just fine. Why? Because caffeine blocks adenosine, the chemical that builds up during the day and tells your body, hey, it's time to rest. So, yes, you might close your eyes and knock out, but the architecture of your sleep, especially deep sleep and REM, gets disrupted. And that's what determines whether you wake up refreshed or groggy. So, here's the rule of thumb. I recommend no caffeine at least 8 hours before bed. Ideally, give yourself 10 to 12 hours. For example, if you go to bed at 10 p.m., aim to cut off caffeine by noon. It might sound extreme, but you'd be amazed how much better your sleep quality becomes. Now I know people are different. Some folks can have an espresso after dinner and sleep like a baby, but most of us aren't built like that. Even if we think we're sleeping well, we're usually sacrificing quality without realizing it. Also, not all caffeine is equal. Coffee, tea, energy drinks, chocolate, they hit differently, but they all affect your adenosine system. Once the caffeine wears off, your adenosine floods in, and you get that caffeine crash, the sudden fatigue after being artificially alert for hours. And here's the thing, 90% of adults on the planet consume caffeine every single day. It's by far the most popular psychoactive substance in the world, not because it gives us superpowers, but because it helps us feel normal. Let that sink in. Most people don't drink caffeine to feel amazing. They drink it just to reach their baseline energy and focus. Why? Because once your brain is used to that daily dose, you stop getting the boost and instead you need caffeine just to function at your usual level, which leads to an interesting question. What happens if you stop? Well, withdrawal, headaches, brain fog, irritability, maybe even mild depression. These symptoms usually kick in within a day or two and can last up to a week. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to quit caffeine. I still drink it and love it. But every once in a while, it's helpful to reset your system. You don't have to go cold turkey. You can just cut your intake in half for a few days, then take 1 or 2 full days off. When you return to your usual dose, you'll actually feel it again. The energy, the clarity, the mood lift. That's how you use caffeine, as a tool, not as a crutch. Here's a simple strategy for managing this. Step 1. For 3-4 days, cut your caffeine intake in half. Either reduce the volume or mix with decaf. Step 2. Take 1-2 full days off. Yes, you'll feel a little foggy, but it's temporary. Step 3. Reintroduce caffeine at the reduced dose. That's your new baseline. Step 4. When you need a real boost, an important meeting, a hard workout, go back to your old dose for that day only. This cycling strategy keeps your system sensitive and responsive. It helps avoid tolerance crashes and long-term sleep disruption. And don't stress about exact measurements. You don't need to count every milligram unless you really want to. Just pay attention to your own body's responses. Now, let's zoom out. Why is all of this sleep caffeine-focused dopamine so important? Because in today's world, our attention is under siege. Everywhere you look, something's pulling at your brain, notifications, social media, headlines, alerts. And the more you give in to them, the more your dopamine system gets hijacked. You end up in a pattern where you're not focused on anything deeply. You're just switching between contexts again and again and again. Our brains were not built for that. Social media is the clearest example. You can scroll through 100 different stories in 5 minutes. You can go from a video of a dog dancing to a war zone to someone making pancakes, to a fitness tip, to a motivational quote, all in a single minute. That kind of rapid context switching is unnatural. Your brain tries to keep up, but over time you start feeling exhausted without even knowing why. And when you step away from the screen, the world feels dull, slow, like it can't compete with what you just saw. That's the danger. It's not just that your dopamine is depleted, it's that your baseline drops. You're no longer doing things for joy. You're doing them to escape feeling low. That's the definition of addiction. And here's the paradox. Social media isn't bad. It's how you use it that matters. I use it to teach science, to connect with people, to share ideas, but I've also learned to disconnect, especially in the evenings. These days, I avoid looking at my phone for the first hour after I wake up, and I try to shut it down in the evening. Not always perfect, but it helps. The goal is to create a boundary, to make space for your own thoughts to breathe. And if you catch yourself scrolling without knowing why not looking for anything in particular, it's time for a dopamine reset. Even just a few hours away from stimulation can help. A day or two is even better. Let your brain recalibrate. Let your nervous system come back to baseline. Because if everything becomes constant stimulation, music, podcasts, caffeine, social media, sugar, you're never letting your system rest. You're never giving your mind room to recover. So the big question is this: can you learn to enjoy effort again? Can you enjoy a slow walk with no music? A workout with no phone, a task that's hard and quiet and unrewarded. Because that's where true focus lives. That's where the ability to delay gratification grows. That's where real sustainable mental strength is built. Let's keep this real for a moment, because building mental strength isn't always about pushing harder. Sometimes the real superpower is knowing when to pull back, to disengage, to rest. We glorify the hustle, the grind, the never-stop mindset. And don't get me wrong, there are times when pushing through is essential. But if you never let up, if you're always in go mode, your nervous system breaks down. Slowly, quietly, until one day you're burnt out and don't even know how it happened. So here's the real skill: learning how to toggle between deep engagement and deep rest, not just once a year on vacation, but throughout your day. This is something high performers across fields, athletes, musicians, thinkers do extremely well. They don't just go hard. They know how to pull back with intention. I call this learning to self-regulate in real time. Instead of working yourself to exhaustion, then crashing, then trying to recover, you learn to pulse. Focus, then rest. Focus, then rest. It's a rhythm. Let me give you a simple analogy. Imagine your attention is a seesaw. On one end is leaning in full effort, laser focus all in. On the other end is leaning back, relaxing, reflecting, recharging. Most people either lean too far forward until they burn out, or they lean too far back and never get started. The goal: find the center point, that grounded, stable zone where you're alert but calm, engaged but not frantic, productive but not stressed. You've probably heard the phrase forward center of mass. It's a term from movement science, and I love using it as a metaphor for engagement. When you're in forward center of mass, you're leaning into life. You're moving with intention. You're not slouching back passively, and you're not sprinting until you collapse. You're in flow. But here's the catch: being in that state takes energy. You can't stay there 24/7. You need moments to reset, to come back to neutral, so you can lean forward again when it counts. So let's talk about some practical ways to regulate this seesaw in real time. First, physiological sighs. A physiological sigh is a quick double inhale followed by a long exhale. Like this: inhale, slightly more inhale, then exhale slowly. It's not a breathing hack. It's a built-in function of your nervous system. We actually do this automatically when we cry or when we're stressed. But when done deliberately, it's one of the fastest ways to calm your system. Inhale twice, exhale slowly, just 2 or 3 rounds, and you'll feel your heart rate drop. Your mind gets clearer. You're no longer hijacked by adrenaline. Second, non-sleep deep rest NSDR. This is a term we use for practices like yoga nidra body scans or even just lying down in silence for 10-20 minutes. It's not meditation. There's no need to clear your mind or control your thoughts. Just lie down, listen to a guided script, or even sit quietly with your eyes closed. NSDR helps your body and brain recalibrate after deep work. And the studies are clear. People who do NSDR after intense focus retain information better, learn faster, and recover quicker. Even if you can't nap during the day, you can take 10 minutes of NSDR. It's like giving your brain a software update without turning off the machine. Third, sleep. Let's stop pretending this is optional. Sleep isn't just recovery, it's where real transformation happens. It's where learning is locked in, where emotions are processed, where physical repair takes place. People ask me all the time, how do I fix my focus? How do I beat anxiety? How do I stay motivated? And I always say, how's your sleep? Because nothing works when sleep breaks down. Your willpower fades, your mood swings, your memory gets fuzzy, you're more impulsive, less rational. You become reactive instead of proactive. So, if you're struggling with attention or energy, always start with sleep. Get that foundation in place, then build from there. Here's a simple checklist for better sleep. Morning light within the first hour of waking. Avoid caffeine 8-12 hours before bed. Dim lights in the evening. Avoid screens an hour before sleep. Cool room temperature 65-68 degrees Fahrenheit is ideal. No heavy meals or alcohol late at night. Sleep. Consistency, same wake-up and sleep times every day. You don't have to be perfect with all of them. Just start with one. The rest will follow. Now, here's a little myth I want to bust. Waking up once in the night is normal. People panic when they wake up at 3 a.m. and think, my sleep is broken. But actually, a single wake-up, especially to use the bathroom, is no big deal. It's called nocturia, and it's common. What matters is that you can fall back asleep. So don't stress. A perfect night's sleep isn't the goal, a restorative one is. That said, if you're consistently waking up multiple times or staying awake for long stretches, that's something to investigate. Look at caffeine timing, stress levels, screen use. Even diet, being underfed, can spike cortisol and wake you up in the night. Speaking of diet, let's talk about food and sleep. There's a lot of hype about intermittent fasting, and it's a powerful tool. But here's the truth: you need enough carbohydrates to sleep deeply, especially if you're highly active, stressed, or training hard. Carbs increase tryptophan, which leads to serotonin, which then becomes melatonin, your sleep hormone. That's why comfort food helps people relax. It's not just emotional, it's chemical. So, if you're fasting hard and find yourself restless at night, consider adjusting your meal timing. You don't need to eat right before bed, but you might need a little more fuel in your system to sleep well. This is why health isn't about strict rules. It's about feedback loops. Listening to your body, tweaking based on your real experience, not what worked for someone else on the internet. And remember, the path to great sleep and great performance starts in the morning, not at night. When you get that right, your focus gets sharper. Your motivation comes back. You stop chasing artificial stimulation and start creating real, sustainable energy from within. Let's dive deeper into something most people overlook: light timing, and why it might be the single most powerful yet underrated factor that controls your mood, focus, and energy levels. We already talked about morning sunlight being essential, but there's one more key part to this equation: afternoon light. You see, in the afternoon, especially as the sun begins to lower, there's a special opportunity to anchor your circadian rhythm for better nighttime sleep. This exposure tells your body, okay, we're in the back half of the day now. It calibrates your internal clock and reduces your sensitivity to artificial light at night. That's crucial because when the sun goes down and the screens come on, your brain gets confused. It starts interpreting your Netflix binge or scrolling session as daylight, which delays melatonin release, meaning your sleep gets pushed back and your quality of rest declines. That's why I call afternoon light your Netflix inoculation. Think of it like a vaccine for your circadian system. It doesn't make screen time harmless, but it helps your brain stay on schedule despite it. So here's your rhythm. Morning light primes alertness, boosts cortisol in a healthy way, starts melatonin countdown. Afternoon light reinforces timing, strengthens clock, makes evening light less disruptive. Evening dimness reduces melatonin. Suppression sets the stage for sleep. You don't have to live like a monk to apply this. Just be intentional. Get outside in the morning and afternoon, even if it's cloudy. Keep your evenings a little darker and calmer. Your body will thank you. Now let's shift to something that gets even less attention: food and timing, and how it shapes your emotional and cognitive performance. Most people think of nutrition in terms of macros, calories, and weight loss. But food is also information. It tells your body how to feel, how to think, even how to sleep. For example, eating too little, especially if you're under stress or pushing hard, can be a hidden cause of anxiety, poor sleep, and low focus. Why? Because when you don't eat enough, particularly carbs, your body starts releasing cortisol to mobilize energy. Cortisol isn't bad, but if it stays elevated too long, it makes you feel restless, irritable, wired, or even panicky. And here's what's fascinating: many people mistake this stress for motivation. They think they're dialed in, but really they're just running on stress hormones, not true energy. You can't live like that for long. Eventually it crashes. So what's the fix? It's not about constantly snacking or eating late into the night. It's about matching your fuel to your output. If you're training hard, working deeply, or navigating emotional stress, you need enough nutrition to support that effort. And yes, that includes carbs. I'm not here to bash keto or fasting. Those tools work great for some people some of the time. But if your sleep is suffering, your mood is low, and your motivation's off, start by checking your food volume and timing. Your body needs fuel to relax. It needs nutrients to build neurotransmitters like serotonin, which calms the brain and helps transition into sleep. So don't be afraid to eat a little more if your system is redlining. Now, let's talk about something even more subtle: mental fatigue from constant novelty. This is one of the biggest modern-day challenges, and most people don't even realize it's happening. Think about your phone. Every scroll gives you a new context, a new person, a new story, a new emotion. It's rapid novelty. Your brain lights up with each switch. Dopamine spikes again and again and again. But here's the dark side. The more novelty you consume, the more your brain expects it. And then when you're in the real world, sitting through a meeting, reading a book, talking to someone, your brain goes, "Where's the stimulation?" And you feel bored. This isn't a character flaw. It's a neural adaptation. Your brain is built to seek novelty. It's a survival mechanism. But when it's bombarded with novelty all day, it becomes numb to the ordinary. And then life, actual, real, meaningful life, starts to feel empty. So, how do you fix it? You create space. You fast from stimulation the same way people fast from food. Not forever, but enough to let your nervous system come back to baseline. Here's a few ways to do that. Turn your phone off for an hour a day. No airplane mode, just off. Go on a walk with no podcast, no music, just silence. Read one long-form article or chapter of a book without switching tasks. Drive in silence, no radio, no scrolling at red lights. Just think. These are small things, but they rewire your attention. They train your brain to be okay with depth, with stillness, with slower pacing. And when you reintroduce stimulation, music, social media, podcasts, you enjoy it more because you're no longer addicted. You're in control. Remember, a movie is worth 1,000 pictures, and a picture is worth 1,000 words. Our visual system is built to lock in on motion and novelty. That's why scrolling is so addicting. It's an endless stream of mini movies, and your brain is trying to process all of them at once. But when you step away, when you slow down, when you train yourself to enjoy non-stimulating activities, something incredible happens. Your natural dopamine sensitivity returns. Suddenly, going for a run feels fun again. Reading a book feels immersive. Cooking dinner becomes meditative. Even doing nothing, just sitting and thinking, feels peaceful instead of boring. This is how you reclaim your mind. It's not about quitting technology. It's about mastering your nervous system so you can choose when and how you engage, so you're not reacting to everything all the time. That's the goal. Not just productivity, not just performance, but clarity, ownership, peace, and yes, real joy. Let's take all of this, the light, the caffeine, the dopamine, the focus, the recovery, and tie it together with one powerful idea. You can train your nervous system to be your ally, or you can let it run you into the ground. When you understand how your system works, how attention is regulated, how dopamine rises and falls, how stimulation affects motivation, you stop being a victim of your own impulses. You start to lead yourself. So let's bring it back to the core skill that makes all the difference, the ability to engage and disengage intentionally, not just once in a while, but all day long. This isn't about discipline in the traditional sense. It's about deliberate control. It's about knowing when to lean in forward center of mass and when to lean back and reset. And the better you get at that toggling process, the more consistent your energy, mood, focus, and creativity become. This applies to everything: workout, study, relationships, work, even rest itself. Let me give you an example from my own life. When I was teaching undergraduates, I started noticing that my students, especially during afternoon lectures, were just gone. Eyes glazed over heads, nodding off. Even if the material was interesting, the environment made it tough to stay awake. And I realized engagement isn't just about content. It's about state. If the body is slouched, the lights are dim, the room is warm, the voice is monotone, the brain checks out. Even if it wants to focus, it can't override that environment. So I switched to teaching evening sessions. People were more alert, more conversational, more awake, and I encouraged movement. I'd let them stand, stretch, ask questions. I wasn't trying to be cool. I was trying to recruit their attention system. Because focus is physical, not just mental. If you want better focus, ask yourself, how's your posture? How's your breathing? Are you hydrated? Are you in a bright environment or a sleepy one? Is your visual field locked in, or are you constantly distracted? These are small changes with massive effects, because your body drives your mind far more than we like to admit. Now, let's go deeper, because this isn't just about staying awake or getting stuff done. Let's talk about neuroplasticity, the actual process of learning growth and long-term change. We touched on this before, but here's the key idea. Neuroplasticity is not an event. It's a process, and it's triggered by a very specific sequence. Focused attention, mild levels of stress or friction, rest and consolidation. This is why learning something new often feels uncomfortable. That stress, that friction, that I don't get this feeling. That's the signal that your brain is being challenged to adapt. But you don't learn during the challenge. You learn during rest. So here's what you want to optimize. During focus, minimize distraction, sit up straight, maybe use a timer for a 90-minute bout. Introduce micro breaks. Use gap learning. Take 10 seconds off every few minutes to let the brain replay what you just did. After the session, use NSDR, take a walk, or just do something non-cognitive, anything that lets the nervous system settle. And at night, sleep deeply. This is where the actual neural rewiring happens. If you've ever had the experience of struggling with a new skill one day and then suddenly being better at it the next, that's sleep-based neuroplasticity in action. Now, let's talk about something people rarely connect with this process: emotions. Your emotional state influences how well you learn, how deeply you focus, and how long you stay motivated. And here's the twist. You don't have to feel good to do good work, but if you attach a sense of meaning to the effort, you're way more likely to show up. For example, I've done workouts that felt awful, heavy legs, low energy, no motivation, but I reminded myself, this is one brick in the wall, and afterward I felt amazing. Not because the workout was fun, but because I proved to myself that I could show up anyway. That's the real win. Same with writing, same with meditation, same with any discipline. You don't chase the dopamine hit in the moment. You invest in the win that comes later, and you trust that it's coming. That's how high performers think. That's how resilience is built. Now, here's something advanced but incredibly powerful if you get it. It's a concept from behavioral neuroscience called intermittent reinforcement. We've talked about it in the context of dopamine, that unpredictability increases motivation. But it also applies to how you reward yourself for effort. If you celebrate every single win, give yourself a treat every time you show up, the effect wears off. Your brain expects it, motivation drops. But if you randomize your rewards, if you occasionally delay gratification, you build a deeper, stronger motivation loop. This is how casinos work. It's also how high-functioning habits are formed. So next time you do something hard like a Focused work session or a difficult run don't always reward yourself. Sometimes just note the effort. Let the reward be internal. Let the motivation build. This keeps your dopamine system flexible and your drive sustainable. One last idea for today: don't overlayer your sources of stimulation. We touched on this before, but it's worth repeating. If every workout has to include your favorite playlist, perfect lighting, ideal weather caffeine, and motivation videos, what happens when one of those things is missing? Your brain goes, nah, not worth it. So strip it down occasionally. Do a phone-free workout. Go for a run without music. Read with no background noise. Write in silence. Yes, it's harder. But next time, you add your favorite stimulant back in music. Coffee, whatever. It feels amazing. You've created contrast, and contrast is what drives appreciation. Let's bring all of this home. You've now seen how everything connects: dopamine attention light, caffeine effort rest rewards. At first glance, it might seem overwhelming, but once you zoom out, you realize it's all pointing toward one simple idea. The quality of your life depends on how well you manage your inner world, not how motivated you feel, not how perfect your habits are, but how well you understand and regulate the systems inside you, especially your nervous system. Most people go through life reacting to whatever's in front of them. They wake up to an alarm, grab their phone, scroll for dopamine, drink coffee, for fake energy, chase productivity all day, then crash at night, wondering why they're anxious, distracted, and exhausted. But it doesn't have to be that way. When you start managing your internal state, you gain leverage. You start choosing when to push, when to pause, when to reward yourself, when to sit with the friction. And guess what? That's freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to do what matters even when it's hard. Let's talk about what that looks like across your day. Morning. Your first hour is everything. Before you check your phone, before you drink that first cup of coffee, take a moment to claim your attention. Get sunlight in your eyes. Even on cloudy days, step outside. Let your circadian system calibrate. Move your body. A short walk, a few stretches, just enough to raise your core body temperature. Delay caffeine for 90-120 minutes. Let your adenosine clear out naturally, and you'll avoid the afternoon crash. This morning routine isn't about perfection, it's about intention. You're telling your brain, we're not chasing stimulation, we're building focus. Midday. This is your productivity window. Structure it like an athlete structures training. Work in 90-minute bouts. Eliminate distractions, one task, one goal. Use the gap effect. Every few minutes, pause for 10 seconds. Let your brain replay what you just did. After the bout, rest. Ideally, with a walk, a short nap, or NSDR. Even 5 minutes of staring out the window can help. Don't fight the brain's natural rhythm. Work with it. You'll get more done and feel better doing it. Afternoon. This is where energy dips. Don't panic. Use it wisely. Get a second dose of sunlight. It helps reduce the impact of screen exposure later. Move gently. Go for a walk. Change your environment. Shift gears. Avoid caffeine if it's within 8-10 hours of bedtime. Choose water, herbal tea, or just ride the wave. Remember, you don't need to be on all day. You need to be effective when it counts and rested the rest of the time. Evening. This is your transition zone, a sacred time to downshift. Dim the lights. All lights, not just blue. Set the stage for melatonin. Limit stimulation. Put the phone away. Watch something calm. reconnect with others. Don't obsess over sleep, just protect the conditions for it. Cool room, no heavy meals, no stressful conversations right before bed. If you wake up in the middle of the night, don't panic. Just breathe. Get up, stretch. Avoid screens. Let yourself drift back naturally. Sleep isn't always linear. What matters is the pattern, not perfection. Now, let's get real for a second. You don't have to do all of this perfectly. I don't. No one does. Some days I miss my morning sunlight. Sometimes I have caffeine late. Sometimes I scroll way too long. That's life. But the point isn't to become a machine. The point is to have tools, to know how to reset, how to come back, how to repair the system instead of running it into the ground. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about hacks. It's about agency. It's about learning to navigate limbic friction, that internal battle between comfort and purpose, and coming out stronger on the other side. Some days that looks like crushing a deep work session. Other days, it looks like taking a walk and not judging yourself for needing space. Both are wins. What matters most is that you show up and choose intentionally. So whether you're struggling with focus, feeling burnt out, or just trying to optimize your energy, remember this. You are not broken. Your system is adaptable, and every moment is a chance to reset. Your brain is not a fixed machine. It's a living, breathing ecosystem. And the more you understand how it works, the more you can build the life you actually want. One decision at a time. So take a breath. Lean in when it's time to act. Lean back when it's time to rest, and trust the process. Because it works.